The wind cut sharply across the snowy plateau, sending tiny shards of ice swirling in the air. Alex pulled his coat tighter, shivering despite the heavy layers. The outpost was quiet, almost too quiet. The hum of the generators and the occasional clank of machinery were the only sounds against the endless white. It had been a long, cold day, and he was finishing his rounds, checking supplies and repairing minor malfunctions in the communication tower. Alex paused near the edge of the supply shed. Something moved in the snow, quick and light. At first, he thought it was just a stray piece of equipment blown by the wind, but then he noticed the shape, small, hunched, and very alive. He squinted, trying to make it out against the whiteness. A pair of amber eyes peeked out at him from beneath the rim of the shed roof. "Hello?" Alex said softly, stepping closer. The figure didn't move. Its ears twitched. Alex took another step and saw it clearly for the first time. She was not human. Her body was small and lithe, covered in soft orange fur with white accents. Her ears were pointed and moved independently, tracking every sound. Her bushy tail twitched nervously behind her. The creature's eyes were wide, alert, and intelligent, but filled with a mix of fear and curiosity. Alex froze. He had heard stories of the Vulpine species in the region, small scavengers that lived near abandoned settlements. They were known for being quick, smart, and very shy around humans. Few had ever seen one this close. His heart raced, not with fear, but with a strange mix of excitement and concern. "Hey, I'm not going to hurt you," he said slowly, raising his hands in a gentle gesture. The Vulpine girl's ears flattened slightly, and she crouched lower, ready to bolt at any sudden movement. Alex noticed how thin she was, how frost clung to her fur, and how her breath puffed out in visible clouds. The cold was biting, and she shivered uncontrollably. Alex sighed. He had no idea if she trusted humans or even if she would accept help, but he couldn't just leave her here. He took off his blanket, a thick insulated one he always kept folded on his shoulder, and carefully approached her. He moved slowly, keeping his voice low and calm. "Here," he said, holding the blanket out toward her. "Take this. It will keep you warm." For a moment, the Vulpine girl froze completely. Her amber eyes widened, and she blinked rapidly, unsure if she should run or accept the strange human's gift. Alex stayed still, waiting patiently. The wind howled around them, tugging at his coat and chilling him to the bone, but he didn't move. Then, slowly, she stepped forward, tentative. Her small paws sank slightly in the snow, leaving delicate prints. She sniffed the blanket cautiously, her nose twitching. Alex gave her a soft smile. "It's okay. You're safe." Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she lowered herself and let Alex drape the blanket over her shoulders. The small creature hunched further under it, closing her eyes and shivering a little less. Alex felt a strange warmth inside, not from the blanket, but from seeing her begin to trust him. "You're cold," he said softly, brushing a stray snowflake from her fur. "Let's get you somewhere safe." He led her gently toward the outpost entrance, making sure not to rush her. She followed reluctantly, her tail flicking nervously behind her. She didn't speak, and she didn't try to bite or scratch. Instead, she kept glancing at him with those wide amber eyes, watching, assessing, learning. Alex felt a strange connection already, as if this small creature understood more than she let on. Inside the outpost, the warmth hit her immediately. Her fur fluffed up, and she took a cautious step forward. Alex guided her to a small corner near the heater, spreading the blanket around her so she could curl up without being cramped. She sank down slowly, nestling into the soft fabric. Alex watched her carefully, fascinated. Even after all his time on distant planets and with alien species, moments like this never ceased to surprise him. "Do you want something to eat?" he asked gently, pulling a small pack of dried food from his bag. The Vulpine girl's ears twitched, but she didn't move toward it. She seemed more interested in the warmth, in the quiet, in the feeling that she wasn't alone anymore. Alex set the food near her, stepping back. For a few long minutes they sat in silence. Alex could hear the faint sound of her breathing, slow and measured, as if she were thinking. He could feel the rhythm of her tail under the blanket, a subtle sign of her nervousness slowly easing. "All right," Alex said finally, breaking the quiet. "You don't have to do anything right now. Just stay warm. That's enough for tonight." The Vulpine girl tilted her head, her ears flicking. Then, in a gesture that surprised him, she lifted one small paw and placed it on his hand briefly. It was fleeting, almost shy, but it carried an unmistakable meaning, trust. Alex's heart skipped. He had not expected such a clear sign so quickly. He sat down a little distance away, keeping his presence non-threatening, and watched as she curled up under the blanket. Her eyes eventually closed, and she seemed to drift into a light sleep, her body still trembling slightly but less than before. Alex allowed himself a small smile. The rest of the night passed slowly. Alex stayed nearby, making small adjustments to the heater and checking the blanket around her. Occasionally, she would twitch in her sleep or shift her paws, but she never tried to leave. He realized she had chosen to trust him, for the first time in who knows how long. As the hours went by, Alex thought about how fragile trust could be between species. He remembered reading about Vulpine scouts and scavengers, how difficult it was for humans to gain their confidence. And yet here she was, a small, shivering alien girl letting him care for her without fear. In the early morning, a soft knock on the outpost door alerted him. One of the other engineers came in, rubbing sleep from their eyes. Alex gestured silently toward the corner. "Look," he whispered. The engineer's eyes widened. "Is that a Vulpine?" Alex nodded. "Found her outside last night. She was freezing. I gave her my blanket." The engineer stepped closer, careful not to startle her. The Vulpine girl opened one eye and glanced at the newcomer, then returned to her blanket. There was a moment of silence. Then slowly she lifted her head and emitted a soft, curious chuffing sound. The engineer froze, unsure how to react, but Alex just smiled. "She's okay," he said quietly. "She's just cautious." For the first time, Alex allowed himself to feel something he had not felt in months. Hope. Hope that even in this harsh, cold, and dangerous world, moments of connection were possible. Moments where trust could be built. Moments where two entirely different beings could share warmth not just from blankets, but from understanding and care. He stayed there a while longer, watching her sleep peacefully under the blanket, marveling at the small creature who had silently accepted him into her world. The wind outside howled still, but inside there was warmth. And for the first time in a long while, Alex didn't feel completely alone. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he knew that this encounter was only the beginning. Something about the way she looked at him, even in those brief, fleeting moments, told him that their story together had just begun. And whatever challenges lay ahead, he was determined to be there for her. The Vulpine girl, wrapped snugly in the human's blanket, gave a tiny sigh of comfort. Her ears twitched one last time before settling down. Alex watched her, speechless in a way he had never been before. He realized then that a simple gesture, a blanket, could bridge the gap between worlds. And perhaps, just perhaps, it could also bridge hearts. The first part of their story had begun, quiet and fragile but filled with promise. Outside, the wind roared on, but inside, trust had begun to bloom. The morning light spilled through the outpost windows, catching the frost on the metal walls and making it sparkle like tiny stars. Alex was already awake, checking the generator and adjusting the heater. He kept glancing at the small corner where the Vulpine girl had curled up under the blanket the night before. She was awake too, stretching her tiny body, ears twitching as she surveyed the room with cautious curiosity. "Morning," Alex said softly. He didn't want to startle her. She turned her head toward him, tilting it like a curious child. Her amber eyes were wide and alert, and for a moment, Alex could see a flicker of something almost like recognition, or maybe gratitude. He set a small tray of food near her blanket, dried fruit, protein bars, and a little water. She sniffed at it but didn't immediately eat. Instead, she pawed at the blanket, rearranging it to wrap herself more snugly. Alex watched, fascinated by her gestures. Every movement seemed so deliberate, so intelligent, yet still shy and cautious. "Take your time," he said gently. "You don't have to eat if you're not ready." She paused and glanced at him again. Then, almost imperceptibly, she dipped her head and nibbled a small piece of dried fruit. Alex's heart warmed. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. She was starting to trust him enough to accept food, a gesture humans considered simple, but which meant the world to a Vulpine stranger in a foreign place. After breakfast, Alex decided it was time to show her around the outpost. He wanted her to understand that this wasn't a trap, that humans could be allies rather than threats. She followed him hesitantly, her tail low but twitching occasionally. Her movements were graceful, careful, and surprisingly fast even in the cramped corridors of the outpost. "See this?" Alex said, pointing to a series of machines. "This is how we generate power. It keeps the place warm and gives us electricity for lights and tools. The Vulpine girl crouched slightly, ears flicking as she studied the machines. She didn't touch anything, just observed, her amber eyes scanning the humming devices. Alex explained carefully, using gestures and pointing to different parts. She seemed to understand more than he expected, tilting her head as if making sense of the information in her own way. Next, he led her to the workshop, a small room filled with tools, spare parts, and gadgets. He showed her how to handle simple devices, how to tighten screws and connect wires. At first she hesitated, pawing at a small wrench awkwardly, but when Alex demonstrated gently, she copied his movements, mimicking his careful actions. Her small paws fumbled at first, but soon she was able to turn screws and handle parts with surprising precision. "Not bad," Alex said, smiling. "You're a fast learner." Her ears perked up at the praise. She blinked at him and gave a tiny chuffing sound, which Alex decided must mean she liked it. He chuckled softly. Over the next few days, their routine became a quiet rhythm. Alex would do his rounds and she would follow, observing and learning. He taught her how to identify tools, repair small devices, and even how to use the communication system to send signals. She was curious about everything but never reckless. Every new lesson was met with intense focus, and every mistake with patience and careful attention. One afternoon, while Alex worked on repairing a solar panel outside, the Vulpine girl tried to mimic his movements. She climbed onto a small platform, trying to balance on two legs while handling a simple wrench. Alex turned just in time to see her wobble dangerously. He lunged forward, catching her gently by the paw. "Careful," he said, laughing softly. "I don't want you to get hurt." She froze, looking at him with wide eyes. Then, in a sudden gesture, she pressed her small face against his arm and let out a soft, happy chuff. Alex smiled, feeling a strange mix of pride and warmth. She was learning, yes, but more than that, she was beginning to trust him completely. One evening, while they were sitting near the heater, Alex noticed her staring out the window at the snowy landscape. Her ears twitched and her tail flicked thoughtfully. "What is it?" he asked. She didn't answer in words, she never had, but she padded over to the window and gestured with her small paw toward the distant tree line. Alex squinted. He saw faint movements among the snowdrifts, small shapes running and darting through the snow. "Other Vulpine?" he guessed. Her ears flattened slightly and she made a low, soft chuffing noise. Alex realized that she missed her people. Even though she had started to trust him, the memory of her lost community lingered. He felt a pang of sympathy. "I get it," he said quietly. "I know what it's like to be alone." She looked at him then, amber eyes meeting his, and for a long moment there was silence. No words were needed. He understood her grief, her fear, and her longing. She had begun to open up to him, sharing more through gestures and expressions than words ever could. Later that night, a storm rolled in. The wind shrieked across the plateau, rattling the outpost and sending sheets of snow against the windows. Alex checked the perimeter, making sure all doors and hatches were secure. The Vulpine girl stayed close, curled under the blanket he had given her. Every now and then she would peek out at him, as if to make sure he was still there. "You're safe," he said softly, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. "Nothing's going to hurt you here." She blinked slowly and let out a tiny chuffing sound, a noise Alex had learned meant contentment or trust. He felt speechless again. A simple blanket, a little kindness, and now this small, alien creature had chosen him as her companion, her friend, and perhaps in her own way, her protector. The next morning, he decided it was time to let her explore the outpost a little on her own. She moved cautiously, sniffing corners and jumping lightly onto tables and shelves. Alex followed at a distance, keeping an eye out. It amazed him how agile and fast she was, how different her perspective was from a human's. She saw things in the room that he had never noticed before, tiny cracks in walls, loose bolts, and even a weak panel on the roof. "You'd make a great engineer," Alex said, impressed. "You have a good eye for details." She tilted her head again, ears perking. This time she nuzzled his hand with her muzzle, pressing it gently. Alex froze, completely speechless. He had expected trust to be built slowly, but she was showing him affection in the simplest, purest way possible. The days passed, filled with small adventures. Alex and the Vulpine girl explored nearby areas of the outpost, collected supplies, and learned about each other's habits. She showed him secret hiding spots and shortcuts, places where she had scavenged in the past. He taught her how to use human tools more effectively, how to patch up equipment, and even simple ways to signal him if danger came. One afternoon, while they were outside repairing a damaged antenna, Alex noticed her ears twitching nervously. A distant howl carried over the wind, sharp and threatening. He tensed, realizing it was not just the wind, it was a predator. "Something big, dangerous. Stay close," he whispered. "I won't let anything hurt you." She pressed herself against him, tail wrapped lightly around his leg, showing complete trust. Alex felt a rush of responsibility, but also pride. She had accepted him fully, not just as a helper, but as a guardian, and he would do anything to protect her. After the predator passed, or at least stayed at a distance, they returned inside, shaking but unharmed. She settled under the blanket again, ears slowly relaxing. Alex knelt beside her and placed a hand gently on her head. "You're brave," he said softly. "Even though you're small, you're strong." She chuffed happily and pressed her face into his palm. Alex felt speechless once again. A small act of kindness, a blanket, a safe place, a little trust, had blossomed into something extraordinary. That night, as he watched her sleep, Alex realized that the Vulpine girl was no longer just a stranger. She was a friend, a companion, and maybe even more than that. She had survived alone for so long, but now together they could face anything this harsh world threw at them, and all it took was a simple blanket and a little human kindness to start something that could change both their lives forever. The cold wind was stronger that morning. Snow whipped across the plateau, covering the outpost in a thick white veil. Alex had woken early, checking the external sensors and monitoring the weather. The storm was moving faster than expected, and the frost was already starting to build on the supply sheds. He tightened his jacket and made sure the heating systems inside were working at full capacity. The Vulpine girl had curled under the blanket again, eyes half closed as she rested near the heater. She twitched her ears every time the wind howled outside. Alex watched her, noting how tense she was. Even with warmth and safety, the cold outside had left its mark. "Don't worry," he said gently. "I won't let anything happen to you." She blinked at him and gave a soft, chuffing sound. Alex smiled. He had learned that this small noise, repeated in different tones, carried a lot of meaning. Right now it was gratitude, but mixed with concern. She trusted him, but the storm reminded her that the world could still be dangerous. By mid-morning, Alex decided to check the external supply line. He grabbed his gear and motioned for her to stay inside. The Vulpine girl tilted her head and padded after him anyway. "I'll go slow," he said, smiling. She didn't answer with words, but her ears flicked as if acknowledging. The outside world was harsh. Snow blew sideways, making visibility almost impossible. Alex moved carefully along the path to the supply line, checking equipment and replacing frozen connections. The Vulpine girl followed closely, her paws light on the snow. She watched his every move, trying to mimic him, and occasionally pawed at the snow, fascinated by its texture. Suddenly, she froze. Her ears perked sharply and her tail stood out straight. Alex tensed and followed her gaze. A massive shape was moving through the snowdrifts nearby, a predator known in the region for hunting small creatures. Its dark form contrasted against the white snow, and its eyes gleamed with intelligence and hunger. "Stay close," Alex whispered urgently. The Vulpine girl pressed herself against his side, tail wrapping lightly around his leg. Alex could feel her shivering, not from cold but from fear. He quickly assessed the situation. The predator was large and fast, but it seemed cautious, testing the area before attacking. Alex realized that he would need to act strategically if they were to escape unharmed. He grabbed a small flare gun from his pack and fired it toward a nearby snowbank. The bright light exploded against the snow, startling the predator and making it hesitate. Alex motioned for the Vulpine girl to follow him behind a nearby ridge. She did, her body low and agile, moving silently despite the deep snow. Alex could see her fear, but also her intelligence. She was studying the predator's movements, watching and learning. He felt proud and amazed. This small alien whom he had met just days ago was already picking up on survival instincts in ways humans might take years to understand. Using the terrain to his advantage, Alex led the predator in circles, creating snow barriers and using his tools to distract it. The Vulpine girl followed every instruction, using her quick reflexes to dodge branches and snowdrifts. Together they were a team. Together, they managed to confuse the predator long enough to slip back toward the outpost. When they finally reached the safety of the walls, the predator stayed at a distance, growling and circling, but unable to approach any closer. The Vulpine girl collapsed under the blanket near the heater, her small body trembling. Alex knelt beside her, brushing a strand of snow-covered fur from her head. "You did well," he said softly. "You were brave." She looked up at him with wide amber eyes, her chest heaving from the exertion. Then, in a gesture that caught Alex completely off guard, she nuzzled his hand with her muzzle and gave a soft, happy chuff. Alex froze. His heart raced. He had never felt this speechless before. A simple act of trust, one she had shown countless times before, felt different now. It carried the weight of gratitude, respect, and something deeper, something unspoken between them. For the next few hours, they rested together. Alex kept the heater on high and wrapped the blanket snugly around her. He made a small cup of hot nutrient fluid and offered it. She sipped carefully, her paws delicate on the cup's edge. Alex watched her closely, amazed at how she had adapted so quickly to human kindness. As the storm raged outside, Alex thought about how fragile trust could be. She had lived alone for so long, surviving through instinct and skill. Yet a simple blanket and consistent care had opened her heart to him. He realized that humans, despite their physical fragility, had something unique: empathy, patience, and ingenuity. He had used all three in this short time, and it had created a bond that transcended species. Later that evening, after the storm had passed, Alex decided to show her the outpost from the top of the main tower. He helped her climb carefully, supporting her small body as she stepped onto the observation platform. The plateau stretched out before them, glittering under the starlight. The wind had died down, leaving the world quiet and still. She looked out at the horizon, ears flicking and tail twitching. For the first time, Alex thought he saw a hint of joy in her expression. She wasn't just cautious or fearful. She was beginning to understand the beauty of the world around her. Alex realized that she had never really seen it this way before. Through safety, warmth, and companionship. "You can stay up here as long as you want," he said softly. "The view's better than anything outside." She stepped closer and leaned slightly against him, a rare display of comfort. Alex felt a wave of warmth. He had not only protected her from the storm and danger, but he had also shown her that trust could lead to safety, friendship, and even moments of joy. Over the next few days, Alex continued to teach her. He showed her how to repair minor machinery, how to use simple tools, and how to navigate the outpost safely. She learned quickly, her sharp mind picking up on details faster than he had expected. Her movements became more confident, her gestures more deliberate, and her trust in him grew deeper each day. One afternoon, Alex caught her practicing a small maneuver he had taught her, balancing on a narrow ledge while carrying a tool. She wobbled at first, but then regained her balance. Alex laughed softly, clapping his hands. "Excellent. You're getting the hang of it." Her ears perked and she let out a tiny chuff of happiness. She seemed proud of herself, and Alex felt proud too. It wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about learning, growing, and understanding each other. Then came a moment that would stay with Alex forever. While they were inside repairing a broken heating panel, she suddenly paused and looked at him intently. Her amber eyes seemed to study him, and then, without warning, she wrapped her small paws around his wrist in a gentle, affectionate gesture. Alex froze, heart pounding. She pressed her cheek lightly against his hand, and a soft, warm chuff escaped her throat. He could only stare. This was more than trust. It was recognition, respect, and a bond that needed no words. He realized in that moment how far they had come in such a short time. A simple blanket, a few days of care, and shared experiences had created a connection that neither of them could ignore. That night, as Alex lay in his cot, he thought about the Vulpine girl curled up under her blanket near the heater. Her small, rhythmic breathing was comforting, a reminder that even in a harsh, frozen world, trust and friendship could flourish. He smiled softly, knowing that the journey had only just begun. Together they would face more challenges, more dangers, and more discoveries, but he was ready. Because now he was not alone, and she was not alone either. And in the quiet warmth of the outpost under blankets and starlit windows, Alex realized one simple truth. Kindness could change everything. It could bridge species, it could build trust, and it could create bonds stronger than any storm or predator. The days after the storm were quiet, But the sense of calm was fragile. Alex had grown used to the small routines with the Vulpine girl, checking equipment, sharing meals, teaching her small tasks around the outpost. But he sensed that she was still carrying the weight of her past. Her amber eyes sometimes drifted to the distant horizon, full of longing, and her ears twitched at distant sounds, as if listening for something or someone she had lost long ago. Alex decided it was time to help her in a different way. Not just physically, but emotionally. He wanted her to feel that she could rely on someone, that the outpost could be a home. "Do you want to see something?" he asked softly, crouching to her level. She tilted her head and flicked her tail slightly, curious. Alex smiled and led her to a quiet part of the outpost, a small storage room he had set aside with soft mats, blankets, and small tools she could practice with safely. "This is your place now," he said. "You can stay here anytime you want. No one will bother you." She sniffed the blankets, pawed at the mats, and finally curled up, tucking her tail around herself. Alex noticed the small signs of comfort, a tiny, relaxed exhale, ears no longer flat. She was beginning to feel safe, and he felt a quiet satisfaction. Over the next few days, Alex focused on helping her regain confidence. He taught her more complex tasks like repairing minor circuits, monitoring the weather sensors, and even communicating with the outpost's other residents using simple signals. She picked up quickly, her sharp mind and nimble paws making her almost as capable as Alex in certain tasks. One morning, while Alex checked the perimeter, he noticed her trying to mimic his movements from a distance. She was climbing a small structure to adjust a panel, her balance careful and precise. He called out gently, "Watch your step." She froze, then turned toward him and gave a small, almost shy chuff. He smiled. "Good, but let me help." He walked over, supporting her lightly. Together they adjusted the panel, their hands and paws working in sync. Alex marveled at her intelligence and dexterity. She was more than a fragile alien. She was quick-thinking, capable, and observant. That afternoon, while they rested near the heater, Alex noticed her staring at him for a long time. She wasn't making any noise, just observing. Finally, she padded over and pressed her small face against his chest, tail brushing lightly against his leg. Alex froze, speechless. It wasn't just trust anymore. She was seeking connection, comfort, and reassurance. The simple act of giving her a blanket had led to something deeper, a bond neither words nor actions could fully explain. He gently stroked her fur, feeling the warmth and softness beneath his fingers. "You're not alone anymore," he whispered. "We look out for each other now." She blinked up at him, her amber eyes wide and full of emotion. Then she gave a tiny chuff, pressing her forehead against his hand. Alex felt speechless again, realizing how much this small creature had come to rely on him, and how much he relied on her in return. A few days later, Alex decided to show her the surrounding area of the outpost. He wanted her to see that the world wasn't just cold, dangerous snow, but also full of small wonders if approached carefully. They walked along the plateau, following narrow paths between snowdrifts. Alex pointed out tracks in the snow, rabbit-sized animals, a larger predator's distant footprints, and explained what they meant. She listened intently, ears flicking with interest. Occasionally, she would dart forward to investigate a mark in the snow, then return to him, showing that she trusted his guidance. It was a small adventure, but for both of them it strengthened their connection. They were learning from each other, relying on each other, and slowly becoming inseparable. That night, as the outpost settled into quiet, Alex noticed her pacing near the window. Her tail flicked, ears alert, and her eyes shone with concern. "What is it?" he asked softly. She didn't answer in words. Instead, she padded over to the storage corner, sniffing carefully at the blanket and small mats. Then she looked back at him, chuffing softly. Alex realized she wanted reassurance, not from danger, but from the world itself. He knelt beside her and draped the blanket around her again. She curled up, tucking her head against his leg. "You're safe," he whispered. "Nothing's going to hurt you here." Her amber eyes closed slowly, and she let out a small, content chuff. Alex watched her, speechless once more. The bond they had created went beyond trust. It was mutual respect, friendship, and a growing sense of family. The next day, a small challenge arrived. One of the outpost's equipment units malfunctioned, and Alex needed to fix it quickly before the system slowed down. He took the Vulpine girl with him, knowing that she could assist in her own way. Her sharp eyes spotted loose connections and minor cracks that he had overlooked. "Good eye," he praised, letting her paw guide his hand. Together, they repaired the unit faster than he could have done alone. Alex marveled at how capable she was becoming. She was more than just a small alien. She was an essential part of the outpost now. Afterwards, they returned to the storage corner. The Vulpine girl curled up under the blanket again, but this time she nuzzled him closer. Alex felt warmth flood through him. Their partnership had grown beyond necessity. It had become personal, emotional, and unbreakable. A few days later, Alex decided it was time to share something from his past. He sat with her near the heater and told her small stories of his life before the outpost, how he had traveled to distant planets, the friends he had missed, and the loneliness of being stationed here. She listened quietly, tilting her head, absorbing every word. Though she didn't speak, her eyes reflected understanding and empathy. In turn, she began to share small gestures of her own past. She showed him how she had survived alone, using her speed and intelligence, and how she had learned to be careful around humans. She mimicked certain gestures like balancing on two legs or using her paws like hands, showing that she had observed other species closely. Alex realized that she was not just intelligent, she was adaptable, quick, and full of quiet strength. One evening, while Alex was making repairs, he noticed her looking at him intently. Then she suddenly placed her small paw on his shoulder and gave a gentle, reassuring chuff. It was as if she wanted to say, "I trust you. I believe in you." Alex froze, speechless again. A simple act of kindness, a blanket, warmth, attention, had grown into a bond that neither species could have predicted. That night, Alex lay in his cot, thinking about everything that had happened. The Vulpine girl curled under her blanket, tail wrapped around herself, ears flicking occasionally. He realized how much she had changed and how much he had changed. She had taught him patience, trust, and the power of small gestures. He had given her a blanket, and she had given him companionship, loyalty, and a connection he had never expected. Outside, the stars shone brightly over the snowy plateau. Inside, the outpost hummed with quiet life. Alex knew the world was harsh and the future uncertain, but for the first time he felt a deep sense of hope. Together they could face anything. He reached over and gently patted her head. She blinked at him, ears twitching, then pressed her muzzle softly against his hand. Alex smiled, completely speechless once more. The blanket had started it all, but what had grown between them was far greater than he had ever imagined. And in that quiet warmth, surrounded by snow and starlight, Alex realized something he had never fully understood before. True connection was built not just on survival, but on trust, kindness, and shared experiences, and he and the Vulpine girl had just begun a journey that neither of them would ever forget. The morning sun peeked over the snowy plateau, casting long golden shadows across the outpost. The wind had calmed, leaving the world silent except for the soft crunch of snow underfoot. Alex moved carefully through the corridors, checking the equipment as usual, but his mind was partly on the Vulpine girl. She had been restless that morning, pacing near the storage corner where the blanket always lay. Her ears twitched at every sound, tail flicking nervously. Alex knelt beside her, brushing a strand of fur from her face. "You're okay," he whispered. "Nothing will hurt you here." She blinked up at him, amber eyes wide and trusting. Then, slowly, she stepped closer and pressed her small face against his chest. Alex froze, speechless again. The connection between them had grown stronger than ever, and he realized just how much they had both changed in the days they had spent together. Today he decided they would venture farther from the outpost. The plateau held small resources and hidden areas he wanted to show her, and he wanted her to feel fully confident exploring with him. "Come on," he said gently, holding out his hand. She sniffed it, then patted forward, brushing her small body against his arm as they stepped outside. The snow glistened in the morning light, and the world seemed quieter and safer than before. Alex led the way along a narrow path between drifts, explaining landmarks and hidden areas along the route. She watched closely, ears twitching, tail flicking, her paws leaving delicate prints in the snow. After a while, they reached a small ridge overlooking a frozen river. Alex pointed to a cluster of rocks below. "See those?" Sometimes small animals hide there. It's safer than wandering out in the open. The Vulpine girl crouched slightly, her eyes scanning the area. Then, to Alex's surprise, she darted forward, moving swiftly and gracefully across the snow toward the rocks. She paused, sniffing, then gave a small, happy chuff, tail wagging lightly. Alex laughed softly. She was learning to be confident, independent, but still aware of his presence. "Good job," he called. "See, you can do it." She paused, looking back at him, ears perked, then bounded over to him. Alex knelt, letting her brush against him in a gesture of shared triumph. She pressed her small muzzle against his shoulder briefly, then darted back to explore. As they explored, Alex noticed subtle signs in the snow, faint tracks from a larger animal. He froze, signaling the Vulpine girl to stop. The predator from before, he realized, was nearby. But this time they were prepared. "Stay close," he whispered. "We can handle this together." The Vulpine girl crouched beside him, body tense, but alert. She had learned from the previous encounter how to move quietly, how to sense danger, how to trust him and herself. Alex felt a surge of pride. She wasn't just surviving, she was thriving. The predator appeared on a distant ridge, black against the snow, eyes glinting. Alex assessed it carefully, calculating the safest path back to the outpost. He gestured for the Vulpine girl to follow him slowly, keeping low. She obeyed without hesitation, trusting his guidance completely. They moved in silence, using the terrain to hide their movements. When the predator approached too closely, Alex used a reflective panel to catch the sun's light, startling it and forcing it to retreat temporarily. The Vulpine girl watched him intently, then gave a soft chuff, signaling understanding. Together they reached the safety of a snow-covered grove. Alex helped her find a sheltered spot behind a rock. She curled up, ears flicking, tail wrapped tightly around herself. Alex knelt beside her, brushing a bit of snow from her fur. "You were amazing," he whispered. "I'm proud of you." She looked at him, amber eyes wide, and gave a tiny chuff. Then, unexpectedly, she placed one paw on his chest and pressed her face gently against him. Alex felt his heart swell. This small gesture carried trust, gratitude, and something deeper, a bond that neither species had experienced before. After a moment, they resumed their journey back to the outpost. Alex felt a quiet sense of triumph. They had faced danger together, and she had not only survived but grown stronger because of it. And he had learned as well that courage, kindness, and patience could build bonds stronger than any fear. When they returned, the outpost looked the same as always, but everything felt different. Alex set down a small supply of food and water for her, watching as she ate carefully, then curled under her blanket with a sigh of contentment. He sat beside her, running a hand gently along her fur. "You're not alone anymore," he said softly. "And you don't have to face the world by yourself." She looked up, amber eyes meeting his, and pressed her muzzle against his hand. Alex felt speechless again. So much had happened since he had first given her the blanket. A simple act of care had led to trust, companionship, and an unspoken understanding. As the evening settled over the outpost, Alex and the Vulpine girl sat together near the heater. He watched her ears twitch, tail flick, and eyes shine with quiet intelligence and emotion. She had become more than a companion. She was a friend, a partner, and in many ways, a family. He thought back to the first time he had found her in the snow, shivering and alone. Back then he had given her a blanket, unsure if she would accept it. Now she had given him something in return, a bond, loyalty, and trust that no storm, no predator, and no distance could break. That night, the Vulpine girl curled up closer than ever, pressing against him lightly. Alex wrapped the blanket around both of them, feeling the warmth not just from the fabric, but from the connection they shared. He realized that this small act of care had changed everything. The days that followed continued with their quiet rhythm, checking the outpost, exploring the nearby area, learning from each other, and sharing moments of companionship. But now, Everything carried a deeper meaning. Each smile, each chuff, each gesture of trust was a reminder of how far they had come together. One afternoon, while Alex repaired a small solar panel, the Vulpine girl climbed onto a nearby ledge, balancing carefully while watching him. She looked confident now, her movements precise and deliberate. When she saw him glance at her, she gave a small, proud chuff and nuzzled his hand. Alex laughed softly, speechless yet again. She had grown so much, and he had grown too, not just in skill but in understanding the power of empathy and trust. That evening, as the sun set over the plateau, painting the snow in hues of gold and pink, Alex and the Vulpine girl stood at the top of the observation tower. The wind was calm, the world silent and serene. She pressed her small body against him, tail brushing lightly against his leg, and he felt a deep sense of peace. "You've come a long way," he whispered. "And I've learned a lot from you too." She blinked up at him, ears flicking softly, then gave a gentle, happy chuff. Alex felt speechless once again. A simple blanket had led to something extraordinary, a friendship that transcended species, built on trust, care, and shared experiences. As night fell, they returned inside the outpost. The Vulpine girl curled up under the blanket near the heater, ears twitching lightly, tail wrapped neatly around herself. Alex sat nearby, watching her sleep, marveling at the journey they had shared. He realized that in a harsh, cold world, small gestures, kindness, patience, and trust could create bonds stronger than any storm, stronger than fear itself. And as he drifted to sleep, Alex knew one simple truth. Giving someone warmth could bring warmth to your own heart in ways you never imagined. The Vulpine girl had changed his life as much as he had changed hers. A simple blanket had started it all, but what had grown between them was far greater. A connection that would last a lifetime, unspoken yet undeniable. In the quiet warmth of the outpost under starlit windows and blankets, Alex finally understood what true companionship meant, and the Vulpine girl resting peacefully beside him seemed to know it too. The bond between them was complete, built on trust, strengthened by care, and sealed with the simple act of sharing warmth.